Hey everybody, Prof Sales coming at you with another video, and today's video is about definitions. I've been thinking about this video for a long time and how I wanted to put it together, but it's a subject that I think we don't really cover enough in the reselling community. I see so many people who come into reselling forums, onto groups, into group chats, and they see somebody posting big numbers. They see someone saying, I sold $10,000 worth of product this month. I sold $20,000. And the first thing the person wants to know a lot of times is, what did you sell? Never stopping to think that, hey, this is really, there's something behind this, not just finding items. So I thought I would tackle the thorny subject of what it means to be an entrepreneur and not just a robot, doing what someone else tells you to do, as many people are in their 8-to-5 jobs. So I thought I would start out with a definition of what it means to be an entrepreneur, and I've got one from offline. I think this came from the Oxford Dictionary, and it says, a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses, taking on greater than normal financial risk in order to do so. Now there's a couple key words there I want to focus on. The first key word is businesses. This is someone who's actually organizing and operating a business. You're not an entrepreneur if you go to work for Best Buy. That doesn't make you an entrepreneur just because you're there working for Best Buy. You didn't organize and operate that business. You're there working at it, but you didn't organize it. You didn't start it. The second key word is risk. This is a huge key in being an entrepreneur. Risk. Now, what does that mean? Well, to some people, risk means, putting themselves out there every day in a difficult situation, potentially, without any guarantee of success. And lots of other people gloss over this word risk when they start a business and think, well, there's really no risk in it because other people have done it, and therefore there's no way that I can fail. I'm going to succeed. It's going to mean something different to everyone, but the way I look at it is, when you take a risk, you are doing something without assurance of how it's going to turn out. Could turn out well, could turn out poorly, could turn out sort of in the middle somewhere, who knows? But there's really no guarantee on how it's going to turn out. And I like to use a poker analogy here because I used to play a lot of poker years ago, not as much these days, but poker is a game of risk. Poker, unlike popular perception, is not entirely about luck. I don't really believe in luck anyway, but there are people who make a living at poker, and they're not any luckier than you or me. They just know how to manage risk better. Now, what does that look like? Well, if you're playing, let's say one of the most popular games today is No Limit Texas Hold'em. And in this game, you make bets in various rounds. There's community cards. You have a couple cards in your hand. But you don't know what the next card's going to come out. And when the next card comes out, it completely changes who's winning the hand. But you're taking a calculated risk based on how much money is in the pot, how much money you've got left, the people that are in the hand, how they've been playing, how you've been playing, what the situation is in terms of money, whether it's a tournament or a cash game. There's all these factors that come into it that have nothing to do with the cards. Now that's key. There's lots of factors in poker that have nothing to do with the cards. So what that means is even though you don't know what's going to happen next, i.e. card that's going to come out, you do have all these other factors that you can use to make a decision, an informed decision. And you make bets and call bets and raise bets and place bets based on all those other factors. It's a risk. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. Now, once all the cards have been played out at the end, then you know exactly where you stand, at least, but you still don't know exactly what your opponent has. Or opponents. So poker is a game of risk, managing expected outcomes based on probabilities and what you've seen so far at the table. And it's a complicated game because of that. So how does that relate to us in business? Well, every day in our reselling business, for instance, or any business, we make bets. Now, what do I mean by that? You're making bets based on imperfect information and using the resources you have to make bets on putting money into certain parts of your business, taking money out of your business, buying this, selling that, listing this, listing that, going this direction, going that direction. And you're doing it without the assurance of what's going to happen next. You don't know when you place an item for sale at, say, $50 on eBay, Amazon, wherever, Etsy, Bonanza, you don't know that item's going to sell for $50. You don't. All you know is you can look at previous listings, you can gather up your experience, you can look at other similar items that maybe have sold or are listed now. You can sometimes just make a flat out guess, but you're basically placing a bet. You're betting that this item is going to sell for $50 and you've got some sort of money or time and energy into this item. And you're betting that the money and the reward you get out of this item is going to more than compensate you for the energy and capital and time that you put into the item. It's really, you're doing that over and over. Now, that's a complicated formula as well, and as you proceed in business, you get better and better at that. But that's what an entrepreneur does. They take risk based on what they perceive the market is going to do. They take risk. You might think more of an entrepreneur in terms of, well, they go out and they rent a building and they bring in equipment and they hire employees and they go source items and then they do whatever they're going to do to those items and process them and deal with them, manipulate them, create things, whatever. Maybe they create a product and then they try to sell those items. They're going to market it, but those are all risk. They're placing bets based on what they perceive to be, in their mind, a risk worth taking. Now, not every risk is worth taking, but that's kind of a tricky calculation for us all in certain situations. But in the reselling business, we are taking a risk by buying an item or getting an item, by sourcing it. We took a risk in researching it. Our time is valuable. We don't know if we're going to research something and it's going to turn out to be worth anything or not. We're taking a risk in listing that item. We could have listed something else at the same time, so we lost the opportunity to list another item because we're listing the one we researched and sourced and bought. And then we're taking a risk in the pricing. Maybe it'll sell at that amount. Maybe we could sell it for more. Maybe we should have it priced lower. Maybe we should have bought the green one instead of the blue one. There's all these risks that you are taking at any given moment in your reselling business. And it's difficult to know how those are going to turn out. Just like the card in the poker game, you don't know what the next card is going to be. You just have a calculation based on, your hand and what cards are on the board. It's the same thing in reselling. You are taking a calculated set of risks that tell you, if I do these things and buy these items and source them this way and list them this way, I'm likely to get a return worth having. That makes you an entrepreneur. Some of these bets are going to pay off and some of them do not. That's key. Just as in a game of cards, not every bet pays off. Sometimes you lose. Same thing in reselling, same things in business. You take risks and sometimes they blow up spectacularly. They blow up right in your face. And there's usually two reasons why a risk we take in business will fail, why an entrepreneurial risk will fail. One is because we had imperfect information. Now, what do I mean by that? We don't know everything about the market at any one moment. We can only make educated guesses based on the research we put in. Now, take a couple different examples here. Suppose you have a brand new reseller who goes to a bunch of yard sales and they see a bunch of items at this yard sale and a bunch of items at that yard sale, and they buy a bunch of items. They spend $100. They buy 20 items, $5 an item on average. Without any research and without any experience and without any knowledge of the market, that person's not likely to really get that great a return. They might. They could have just gotten fortunate and randomly picked a couple items or some items that were really good. But the reality is they don't know anything, so they're going out and they're risking their capital and their time with no information to tell them the risk that they are taking with their capital and time is worth it. So the chance of them doing very well with that risk is low. They had imperfect information. Now, what do I mean is they did not know about the market. They did not have much experience selling. Maybe they didn't have any experience selling. They didn't do any research on the items beforehand. They didn't know if they paid a good price or not. All these things were imperfect information because they didn't put in the time and work it took to do that. So the reseller who goes out and does that is not likely to do very well. On the other hand, if you have a reseller who puts in the time and energy to research things, they scan items when they're at yard sales, they look them up, they look at solds, they look at completeds, they look at the apps that are out there, they use them to make better bets, and they have experience with their intuition. If they run into something, the info that the apps are not telling them, they are likely to make a much better set of buys than the inexperienced reseller. And that's all kind of commonsensical. So, but it goes back to information. If you have imperfect information about the market, you're not going to always have a bet that pay off. We would love, this is just like the stock market, we would love to be able to go invest in a company and know that it's going to be a good investment, that we're going to make money in the long run, whatever the long run is, or maybe it's a short run if we want to get in and out of it very quickly. But we don't know that. We don't know for sure what's going to happen to that price because we have imperfect information. We don't know everything about the market. There's just way too many variables in the stock market to be able to comprehend them all. So what do? You go and you research things, you research trends, you research the company, you research other companies, you research the market. You do your best to fill in the gaps in that imperfect information and make a good buying decision. Same thing we do in reselling. Imperfect information is the number one reason why our bets won't pay off in being an entrepreneur. The second reason why our bets don't pay off in being an entrepreneur is that we ignore the information. This almost seems hard to believe, but there are plenty of resellers that go out there and they research items, they know about the market, they keep up with trends and so on, but they ignore them. Why? Because they buy things based on their emotions. They see an item, the perfect example is when you see an item that maybe was something you used to collect, something you really used to like. Take Beanie Babies, for example. There's not any money really in Beanie Babies anymore, but there are people who collected them back, 20 years ago, and there was some money to be made back then buying and flipping Beanie Babies if you knew the ones to get into. But now the market has told us that it doesn't care about Beanie Babies for the most part. You're not going to really make any money in it. So if you ignore that, if you ignore the market and what it's telling you, and you go in the opposite direction, you do so at your own peril. Because yes, it's possible you could be ahead of the curve. That does happen, sure. But if you want to be ahead of the market, you got to research it and know where it's going. If you just ignore it completely, you don't know where it's going. So when you buy something and you ignore the market and what it's telling you about that item, think, I can sell it for this amount. I don't care what the market says. Chances are you're wrong. You're not smarter than the market. It's tough to outsmart the market, whatever the market is, whether it's a stock market, whether it's a game of poker, or whether it's the reselling market. So these are things that entrepreneurs have to keep in mind. We make bets. We have to get all the information we can. We have to realize when we have imperfect information, which that increases our risk. The more imperfect our information is, the more risk we have. And we can't ignore the information that we do have, because to do so will probably increase our risk and we'll probably, likely lose money. So the other thing I think that entrepreneurs do that is different than other types of business owners and employees is we operate businesses. We aren't employees to our business. Now, what do I mean by this? If you got up every day and you just listed items on eBay and you took pictures and you wrote listings and then you shipped them out, and that was all you did in your business, you could make money at that, but you aren't really operating a business. Now, why is that? Well, you could hire someone to do that. You could hire someone to take your pictures, list your items, write the descriptions, pack up the orders, and ship them, couldn't you? Chances are, if you can hire someone to do something in your business, that particular function is something that would be something an employee would do, not a business owner. Now, here's a caveat to that before all of you jump up and down and say, well, you have to do that when you're in business because I can't afford to hire employees. That's true. That's absolutely true. And I do the same thing. I have to pack up and ship items. I have to list things and so on. That's true. But if that's all I did and all I consumed, or that was all that consumed my entire day, I wouldn't be much of a business owner. So what's the difference? What would make someone an entrepreneur versus just an employee to their own business? Well, you would need to be able to go in and research new products, new markets. You would continually be educating yourself about your craft, new techniques, new office equipment, a different setup and flow for how you do things in your business. All these things are useful for you as a business owner. You always have to be looking to grow, because that's what separates you from being an employee to your business versus a business owner and an entrepreneur. If you can hire someone to do it, then that's the definition of an employee task, not a business owner or entrepreneur task. And finally, I want to say that as an entrepreneur, we have to adapt to changing markets. And that ties into the last point I made. The market is going to change. I don't know exactly which way it's going to go with a particular item or a particular platform or what the economy is going to do. No one probably knows that for sure. People make guesses, and sometimes they get lucky and guess it right, and sometimes they don't. But the reality is, no one knows. There's too many variables. You can just make, your best guess, but ultimately it's going to do what it's going to do. But as the market changes, you can start to see that as an entrepreneur. So if you were selling a widget and now there's people want the widget 2.0 and you continue to sell the widget, you're likely to see a decline in your business because people have moved on to the better version. Now you can adapt and start selling the better version, or you continue to try to sell the old one if you think the market's still going to support enough for you to maintain your business and hit your goals and so on. But you have to adapt to that changing market. If the market's telling you that the widget you're selling is soon going to be obsolete and virtually no one's going to want it, then if you ignore that, you're not really doing your job as an entrepreneur, because that's what defines you. You've got to stay on top of that. You can't just sit there with your head down and listing and sourcing and shipping and packing and photograph. That's not going to work. You have to be up on what's going on in your markets. You have to be doing research. You have to be evolving. You have to be adapting. That's just part of being an entrepreneur. When the car came out in back at the turn of last century, the automobile, there were plenty of people who thought this will never work. It doesn't go very fast. It's big. It's clunky. Horses are easier to move around on. And there were plenty of people who probably could have changed from their businesses where they were doing things for people who own horses and so on, and could have moved towards, even the car field, but they didn't. And it adapted and changed, and obviously the mode of transportation for most of the public today still is cars. It'd be foolish today to start business marketing horses as a means of transportation, unless maybe you live out west somewhere where there's not a lot of roads or there's a lot of trails and so on. It just is silly. People aren't going to ride horses up and down the street in New York or Chicago unless you're part of the mounted police. But that's just an extreme example of a changing market, but there's plenty of them out there. Our markets in the reselling community change all the time. Toys are a great example. Toys come into fashion, they're hot one year, and the next year they're not. So it'd be silly to continue to keep pushing that toy. There's plenty of other examples you could probably think of, but not just with hot toys, just in general. Technology. Oh my gosh, technology changes at a breakneck pace. If you're going to go out and try to sell, the iPhone 3 today, that's going to be a tough sell. It might sell maybe in another country, but I don't think it's going to sell in the United States very well, because people have moved on from that technology. They want more gadgets and bells and whistles on their phones. So you have to always keep in mind that markets are going to change, and you must adapt and change with them. So in closing, I just want to say that being an entrepreneur, it's all these things. It's taking risk. It's organizing a business. It's not forgetting that you're not an employee of the company. You are the owner. You are the one with the vision. You are the one that is guiding it. Even if your company is just you, you are still the leader. You are still the visionary. Don't forget that. Don't lose track of that. It's not your job to do all the mundane things forever. It's your job eventually to hopefully grow to the point where you can have someone to do those so that you can continue to lead the company in more directions. Think of how amazing your business could be if you had most of the day, maybe not all the day, but most of the day to investigate new markets, new paths, a new direction, a new sourcing opportunities, new categories to get ungated in, whatever it is. But you took out all the mundane, everyday things that, yes, they're important, but they're not really the best use of your time and energy. You kind of get in your own way as an entrepreneur once you start acting like an employee. And I might do another video on that topic alone, when to act like an entrepreneur and when to act like an employee. And there's probably a time for everyone, but ultimately you want to be in a position where you can be an entrepreneur enough of the time, if not all the time, to where you can grow your business and have it adapt and evolve to whatever markets are leading you. So keep all those things in mind if you really want to be an entrepreneur. Think about it with that mindset. I know I try to do it every day. I try to approach my business with the idea, it's like, how can I make my business better today? Not how can I get these 3 orders shipped faster? I mean, if that's going to make my business faster or better to come out with a better way to ship a few orders quicker, and I can use it every single day, great. That one might be an example. But I don't need to think about, how can I tape this package closed faster? It's maybe important to some degree, but it's not that important in the big scheme of things at this point. It's more important for me to be adapting and evolving to the markets and growing my business in whatever categories I want to grow it into. So all these things are important for being an entrepreneur, and I hope that, it will be something that you can take from this video and grow and become as good of an entrepreneur as you can be. It's a never-ending process. Every day you're adapting and evolving, and the business is changing, the markets are changing. So it's something you always have to keep at the forefront of your mind, not in the back of your mind, the forefront. Today, I'm going to wake up and act like an entrepreneur, not an employee. Very important distinction. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button down below. I really appreciate it if you did. And please leave me a comment, question, a comment, whatever you like. I try to answer every single one of them. I love hearing from you guys. And consider subscribing to the channel as well. That way you don't have to wait for your next fix of Prof sales. You get a notification that it's right there in your email inbox. I really do appreciate it. And this is Prof Sales saying to all of you, good sales to you.